Hello, welcome to a very strange run of Factorio Space Age. As you may have seen in the title of this video, this is a 97.7% achievement run. Specifically 97.7, or 86 out of 88, because I am choosing to not attempt the Space Age speedrun achievements, since this will be my first time actually beating the game, and will also be my first time attempting a full achievement run. That said, the real gimmick of this run isn't the achievements anyway, but the fact that I will be building everything diagonally. As far as world generation, I'm using a modified version of the Rich Resources preset, where I'm increasing the size of ore patches to make my life slightly easier. I'm also increasing the starting area size to maximum, turning off expansion, and reducing the time factor for evolution to 4 instead of 40, because biters really aren't the focus of this run, and I'd rather not have to fend off constant attacks. To compensate, I'm increasing biter nest size so things are more difficult when I finally do have to deal with them. I'm also increasing cliffs because I hate them and I want to cause myself pain. Achievements are going to dictate some of the major early challenges of the run, specifically Lazy Bastard, getting on track like a pro and there is no spoon. Lazy Bastard requires you to handcraft less than 111 items before launching a rocket, meaning the early game is very, very slow, because you can't actually craft any more miners until you get an assembly machine. Getting on track like a pro requires building a train in 90 minutes, which is fine, but losing 15 minutes early on due to Lazy Bastard certainly makes it more difficult. There is no spoon as acquired by launching a rocket in less than 8 hours, but since this is a Space Age run, that only requires blue science and shouldn't be too difficult to achieve. Because of Lazy Bastard, I'm basically just waiting around for 10 minutes or so while I accumulate 118 iron plates and 50 or so copper plates. Before the run really gets started, I should note that I won't be using more than a few existing blueprints, even ones I designed, for the sake of the challenge and to encourage spaghetti. It turns out that Factorio 2.0 changed the recipe for the offshore pump, so it now requires 2 additional iron plates, and I'm stuck wasting a craft on another furnace as I already made the boiler. Once that's done, though, I can set up the lab. The first thing I need to craft here is wooden power poles, since being able to place assemblers by the ore patches will save me a lot of time. Once that's done, I really just need to get as many miners as possible onto the iron patch. I don't like mixed ore patches, so I chose separated starting patches, but the trade-off is that there's going to be a lot of running back and forth early on. Other than not being allowed to handcraft, the early game is pretty much the same as a normal run. Coal snakes, for example, still remain the best way to get coal. Now that I have a few more miners up, I'm making some hand-fed red science, mostly so I can throw a bunch of iron and copper in a chest and have it running mostly unattended while I do other things. Most importantly, this will allow me to research green science. It's probably also a good time to mention that I'm going to stick to hand-fed burner miners until I get the train, since diagonal belts are prohibitively expensive early on, so I'd like to use as few of them as possible. It's also occurred to me to automate basic stone mining so I don't have to hand mine it for the drills and furnaces. I've realized I should probably disable my ability to craft now so I don't fail the run due to a misclick. I'm starting to build the green science assembly line even though I don't have it researched yet, both because I don't want to lose any time and because I don't have anything better to do at the moment. The base keeps running out of power, so I'm adding a buffer to the boiler to save on time, since I won't have to run down there quite as often. I'm using a burner inserter so it will jumpstart itself. Here's the first few belts of this run. I'm finishing up the green science build, and after that I just need to build red science and I can start researching at a more reasonable pace. I've been losing a lot of time to running down to the power plant, so I'm moving it up closer to the coal patch. This should reduce the downtime from power outages. I've decided to feed the science assembly line using chests rather than belts because it will save me time and should work well enough for now. I'm shooting for 30 science per minute. I'm adding more labs so I can research a bit faster. I'm also expanding power because it's slowing down my assemblers, but this setup should take me all the way to the train. I did forget to make it diagonal because I was worried about the achievement, but I'll fix that later. Now that engines are researched, I'm going to get a bunch of gears and steel and start making them since they take a long time to craft. First, as it turns out, I need more furnaces. Time for steel. The steel has been crafting for a bit, so I'm going to throw down a few assemblers and craft the engines. I completely forgot to make gears, so I guess that's first. In the meantime, here's more labs. I've decided to research fast inserters since the slow inserters are bottlenecking my gear assemblers. I also realized I never added a 6th green science assembler, so now we're making 30 science per minute. The logistics research is slow, so I'm adding more labs. I've finished crafting the engines, so I'm taking down the furnaces. I keep forgetting to hand feed the inserter assembler with green circuits, so I'm making a setup to do it automatically. I'm also researching lamps and radars. No, iron does not in fact go on the copper belt. With that, though, I can craft the train. I'm queuing better assemblers and furnaces because they'll be useful down the line, and keeping up the research pace is still important. And that's getting on track like a pro. I'm researching electric mining drills because I forgot to do it earlier since I wasn't using them. I'm laying out the beginnings of a furnace stack since I need to make several of these before I can really start automating things. Doing this diagonally is quite slow, especially since I'm designing this on the fly. One of the interesting considerations with diagonal belts is that everything effectively operates on a 2x2 grid, since each belt is now 2 belts, so it's sometimes necessary to use straight belts due to this misalignment. I will be using underground belts where possible to replace straight belts that arise from this problem. I'm extending the furnace stack to the usual 24 furnaces to get half a yellow belt of output that will double when upgraded to steel furnaces. I'm also finally setting up electric miners so I can feed the furnace stack. The diagonal miner setup I'm going to be using was designed for me by Kelvin from the Factorio Discord, and all credit for that goes to him. I'm using it because it's better than any solution I've come up with myself. Here's coal. I'm also upgrading my basic belt production. And with that, all I need to do is connect the coal and iron to the furnaces. I've got 25 miners on iron, which is more than the half belt I'm in theory going to be consuming, so that's good. The first thing I'm using my actually automated iron for is gear production. I'm also adding a furnace stack for steel. I'm now properly automating belts. I've made the split-second decision to use 48 furnaces instead of 24, so now I have to move my belt production. There's the 48 furnaces, and now I just need to hook my belt production back up to power. I'm getting some miners on the copper patch, as that's the next thing I need to automate. It turns out the underground belt assembler didn't actually have an inserter for iron, and it's been doing nothing this whole time. In any case, that's fixed now. I'm adding the furnace stack for copper. And with that, I just need to connect coal to it, and I'll have both basic resources automated. It turns out I can't actually fit the coal in this way, so I'm going to have to do it differently. Now that's actually done, I can run copper up to the base. The first thing I'm automating for real is green circuits. This isn't that complicated, but I didn't account for belt alignment, so I need to move the underground. My solution for getting the green circuits out of here is not very good and makes the design difficult to expand, but that's a problem for later. Now that green circuits are out of the way, I can make belts and inserters for green science. I'm again running into the belt alignment issue, but this should work now. I just need to connect the iron belt. The science itself is very straightforward. I'm again shooting for 30 science per minute, which will be 45 when I upgrade the assemblers. Red science is very simple as usual. Here's a way to make laying down diagonal belts slightly easier, at the cost of some of your sanity. I'm trying to create a lab design that is both sufficiently diagonal and allows me to input red, green, blue, and military science, as well as space, Vulcanus, and Gleba science packs. I'm not going to be able to fit yellow and purple in here without modification, but I can probably manage it later. With red and green science hooked up, we can resume researching. I'm adding a few labs in a chain behind each lab to increase research speed. We're researching slowly enough that daisy chaining labs works quite well. I'm expanding power, and I actually made it diagonal now. I'm automating yellow splitters using some questionable techniques, but as they say, if it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. This is probably far from the worst thing I'll come up with during this run anyway. I finished the steel furnace stack, so now I can make pump jacks. Wait, pump jacks need pipes. Now I can make pump jacks. I also need to automate chemical plants, but I can't actually do that without harvesting oil since they changed that in 2.0. I have, however, automated Tier 2 assemblers. I'm going to place pump jacks on the oil field simply because it'll give me the trigger research necessary to craft the refinery and chemical plants. Now I can properly set up oil production. Actually setting up the refineries is its own breed of challenge, since despite being large, they have a lot of outputs I need to leave room for. I also do not have medium power poles. Now I just need to connect the oil. And that's done. I'm setting up plastic using sulfur as a placeholder to remind me that it needs fluid inputs. I'm going to put advanced circuits up here, but I don't have them researched yet. I've realized my original plan for routing fluids to plastic production will not work. However, I'm able to use some strange belt routing to make it work. With that out of the way, I'm setting up advanced circuits. Copper wire is produced the same way as usual, one inserter in, two out. I've come up with a design for the output that uses underground belts, and it's surprisingly compact. The only real issue with it is that it's technically two separate belts, so they need to be split or merged depending on whether you're using that line for input or output. All things aside, it's better than what I thought I'd end up with, so I see that as a win. I'm trying to set up blue science now, since robots will make this run a lot less tedious. Trying to run petroleum through here has informed me that my red circuit design is not in fact compact enough. It can be made more compact with a few belts, however, so that's fine. It turns out that I need to move blue science since I can't fit the water pipe in otherwise, but I'm just going to connect it and worry about the science after. There's mass production 1. I would like to direct insert engines into the blue science assemblers if at all possible, since the ratio is close enough and it saves me from having to route more belts, so I'm just going to design around that for now. Engines use the same solution as red circuits, just for input instead of output. Here's gears and pipes. Trying to bring the iron over to the gears, I'm running into what will likely be the first of many occasions where my own design choices make expanding difficult. In this case, the problem is easily solved. Getting the iron over there without using many straight belts is a challenge, but I've found a solution. I have also figured out how to output chemical science, which is good because it means I don't have to redesign this entire thing. I've doubled chemical science to match the 45 SPM of red and green. Here's some lamps, so this abomination can be seen even at night. All that's left is to hook it up to the lab. I'm setting up more red circuits. Also, I'm adding everything necessary for construction robots to the queue, as once this is done, I'm making a beeline for robots. There's advanced oil processing. Here you get a better look at this design of mine. I'm planning to use this for most of the Nauvis factories until I get access to higher tier belts and can do everything by spamming undergrounds. Lube, my favorite. I'm adding more labs since science is backing up. Now I'm trying to route the water in for advanced oil. This could definitely have been made easier with better planning, but I didn't do that, so now I'm paying the price for it. Now I need to route the other oil products. I'm just going to use tanks to store them for now, since I would rather get robots than set up cracking. My decision to flip the refinery seemed like a smart one at the time, but I'm seeing now that it may actually be making things more difficult. In any case, advanced oil is done. I'm expanding the power plant again because things are running slowly. Here's more labs. I'm planning to set up electric engines very similarly to chemical science. Ah, the consequences of my design choices once again. I still haven't created a problem I can't spaghetti my way out of yet, though, and until that happens, I don't have any reason to plan any further ahead. I just need to bring over the steel belt, and then I have all the components for engines. I'm using a long inserter here because I'm worried I won't have space for the pipe routing otherwise. Constantly having to move this water pipe makes me think I may want to move it elsewhere. That's a problem for later. Yet again, I built myself into a corner, but spaghetti wins the day once more. chemical science is definitely getting squeezed by the builds next to it. Now I just need to connect up the resources for electric engines, which of course means more spaghetti. I'm not moving that water pipe again. I'm just going to build around it. With lubricant connected, that's electric engines. All I need now for the robot frames is batteries, so I'm making sulfuric acid. I found myself forced to route the copper through the lab setup because there isn't enough space anywhere else. I've gotten to the point where I frequently need red undergrounds to compensate for my poor design decisions. Although, as I said before, until I can't spaghetti my way out of it, I'm not changing anything. Similarly, iron needs to be routed through the lab setup, but I've also managed to find space for that. Here's batteries. Oh, this assembler isn't connected. I've made a small factory for construction robots, which will continue to insert robots into the network until there are 700 or so available. The nice thing about this is that the network will mostly self-regulate. Now that there are roboports, I can replace all of the chests for my mall items with provider chests. Now that the robot network is filling itself up, I'm automating rocket fuel. I'm using light oil for solid fuel as it's slightly more efficient than the other two options. I'm doing 5 assemblers for rocket fuel because I can always add more later, and this should do for now. Getting the rocket fuel out of here, as usual, requires some degree of spaghetti. With that done, that's one of the 3 ingredients for the rocket out of the way. I'm bringing over the coal belt for some more plastic production, using my shiny new robots so I don't have to place the wiggly belts. This is going to save me so much time. After that, it's on to blue circuits. I am using, again, the universal design, because it hasn't failed me yet. Routing red circuits into the build does require some light belt weaving, but it works. I'm planning to put the rocket over here. Now I'm routing steel over for low-density structures. The area that I expanded to what feels like just minutes ago is already getting crowded. I'm using the design again to extract the low-density structures. With that, all 3 rocket components are done. I'm putting the rocket silo down as a placeholder since I haven't crafted it yet, but I want to route the belts. I'm starting to craft stone bricks for concrete. Cracking is actually necessary now since I'm running out of petroleum. Setting it up is about as horrific as usual. I've not set up any kind of limit on the cracking, as I expect I'm not going to be producing enough for it to matter. I don't have that many refineries. I'm expanding power again because the robots are drawing quite a lot of it. Now I'm just going to get the concrete I need for the rocket silo, which I'm making hand-fed since I'd rather get the stone furnace stack done after I get There Is No Spoon. This process basically amounts to make bricks, put them in the concrete assembler, walk down to get stone, and repeat. I'm queuing quality modules, accumulators, some bullet upgrades, inserter stack size, and power armor. Now I can craft the rocket silo. I'm setting up heavy oil cracking since I'm running out of light oil. This definitely has nothing to do with me cracking all of it. It doesn't need circuits, probably. I've decided I want to send the first platform starter pack up in the achievement-winning rocket, which shouldn't be a problem since I've still got about an hour and a half left. Here's the space platform foundation I'll need for it. This thing really does take forever to craft, doesn't it? I'm going to call the space platform Tilted Tunnel after the Mario level, because I can't think of anything else to call it. And there we go, the timed achievements are done, with over an hour remaining. Now that Lazy Bastard is done, I'm re-enabling my ability to craft. I'm very thankful that it doesn't require planetary science. Here's the base that got the achievement. I'm designing the space platform to do exactly one thing for the moment, which is make more space platform when I give it copper wire. I'm not intending for this to be a moving space platform, rather one that just sits at Nauvis and makes space science. The collectors and assemblers are on their way, and I'm adding an assembler to fill the rocket with copper wire. I'm adding the stone brick furnace stack that I neglected to make earlier. I'm taking stone from the end of the brick furnace stack to make rails, since the next thing I need to make is a train network. The iron sticks are going over here. While things are crafting, I'm going to use this shiny new car to get the lay of the land. I should probably note that I've remembered keeping your hands clean as an achievement, which means I need to kill my first enemy structure with artillery. My original plan was to go to Gleba, but I'm instead going to go to Vulcanus and get artillery first, since I don't want to spend 2 hours trying to kill stompers for pentapod eggs. In that same vein, before I leave, I'm going to build a wall rather than my usual strategy of clearing every nest I can find. I've spent the last 20 minutes designing a smart train station, which I'm not going to get into here. There are plenty of great YouTube videos and other sources on that. This train stop is going to bring in iron. I'm blueprinting the rails to the iron patch, making sure to make them as diagonal as possible. I'm going to build all the outposts with my personal roboport because I can't be bothered to actually run robots all the way out here. Here's the iron mine. Checking on the space platform, it's doing its job. It currently just needs to very slowly make enough space platform to fit all the solar panels. The only weird part of the provider stations is that neither yellow nor red undergrounds are long enough to fit across the rails and power poles, so I have to do this weird thing where I use reds to cross the track and another underground to fit the pole. Despite looking weird, it does work fine. Cliffs are forcing some interesting design choices as per usual. That said, once I connect the balancer, I can go set up the output. I'm setting the iron train up to provide additional iron to the existing furnace stacks since the starter patches are dwindling. I'm using splitters with fish filters and input priority to the old mines for this. I'm running power poles to the iron patch and having my robots build the outpost. I can't figure out how to fit in some of the belt routing. The answer, yet again, is spaghetti. I wish it to be known that I am not proud of this particular solution. With the iron patch mostly set up, I can get to work on coal and copper. My signaling isn't anything particularly complicated, just the old chain signal in, rail signal out, nothing more. I'm realizing I'm going to need to make this a single direction rail to preserve what little sanity I have left, so I'm planning for that. Some people avoid roundabouts and train networks. They do reduce throughput, since the train turning around occupies the intersection for longer, but I don't need much throughput here, so it doesn't matter. That might become relevant later in the run, though. Now I'm just doubling up all the rails. This is definitely more chaotic than it was before, but it should still work, and that's enough. Nothing like a night of railing to heal the body and ease the mind. I'm upgrading the furnaces and belts in the iron stack, because the extra throughput will probably be very helpful quite soon. I'm not sure how my inserters ended up with filters, but that's easily fixed. I'm adding another requester stop for coal. I've realized I don't have enough space for the balancer, but that's not a huge issue, since I can just balance the output outside the station. The first thing I'm doing with this new coal is making power more easily expandable. I'm removing the requester logic because it's unnecessary and I don't want to waste my time debugging it right now. Now it just enables when it has less than 16,000 ore available, which should do for now. The provider station logic is also quite simple. You can force the inserters to input evenly by dividing the amount in the station by the negative of the total number of chests, in my case 32, and outputting each. You then have each inserter enable if its chest has less than the average. I'm setting the train stop to enable if the provider has more than 8,000 ore, which is the amount necessary to fill a 4-car train. I'm finishing the 2-sided rail, laying signals down occasionally. Apparently the path between the iron stations is over 1,000 tiles long, so that's another achievement. I'm making the coal train intersection work with the new rails. Here's the coal provider. Once again, my poor planning has come back to haunt me as I have to resort to unorthodox solutions to fit the belts where they need to go. Regardless, it's now operational. I'm adding 2 new furnace stacks for iron, so I'll get 2 full red belts of it. I'm going to need this for steel anyway. I'm inserting some quality modules into the blue circuit assemblers in the hope I might be able to make quality Tier 2 power armor after getting yellow science. I'm sending up more crushers, collectors, and furnaces to the space science platform so it can make more space platform foundation. Here's the copper requester. I'm also doing a double line of copper smelters, which I'm using naturally to make a full red belt of green circuits. I realized my personal train can't make a U-turn here, so I'm adding another lane. Here's the copper provider. I'm making a fuel station because I will need it soon, and I'd rather send the trains there preemptively than have to go hunt each of them down when they run out of fuel. The interrupt system is really nice for that. I'm not expecting this will use much fuel, so I'm just leeching off of the fuel assembly for the rocket. I'll upgrade it to nuclear fuel later. I'm setting up the interrupt condition so the train will go to the fuel station when it has less than 1 unit of fuel. I discovered in testing that it counts the fuel that it's currently burning, so setting it to 0 would mean the train would trigger the interrupt only when it fully ran out of fuel. To avoid trains sitting at the fuel depot, I'm changing the way requests work, specifically so the fuel stop cannot receive a train full of cargo. Since interrupts trigger only when a wait condition is met, setting a generic interrupt with cargo greater than 0 works perfectly fine, as the train won't activate the interrupt until its wait condition is met. In this case, that means it won't trigger the request interrupt until its cargo is full, as dictated in the wait condition for the provider. Since I need to do keeping your hands clean, I'm automating military science so I can research landmines and flamethrowers, which I'm going to need to build a defensive wall. I'm adding more plastic in preparation for better low-density structure automation. There's the low-density structures. I'm also adding red circuits. All of these, of course, use the standard design that I came up with earlier in the run. And now red circuits are done. I'm also adding more blue circuits since I have the reds and greens close at hand. At the platform, I'm automating space science. I'm finally automating concrete as well, since I need to make the landing pad, and I'd like to send some of it to Vulcanus as well to make crafting the first foundries easier. Speaking of the landing pad, here's the landing pad. I'm researching thrusters in planet discovery. For those who have seen Dosh Doshington's Beltless video, what I'm about to do will be somewhat familiar. If you haven't, you should watch it. It's a very interesting video. I'm finally setting up personal logistic requests because I shouldn't need to run around looking for inserters every 5 minutes at this stage in the game. What I'm going to build now is a bot mall. I'm going to use filtered cargo wagons to feed assemblers, and I'm going to feed the wagons using tanks. Tanks have the ability to request items from the logistic network using the logistic system research. Using them in this way doesn't fail logistic network embargo for obvious reasons, since their intended use case is definitely not what I'm about to do with them. For my purposes, they're simply very expensive requester chests. Aligning cargo wagons is a bit finicky, but I'm pretty sure that if I'm careful about it, I can pull from all 4 sides of the tank. I was originally going to do a belt maul, but once I realized this was an option, I decided it fit the spirit of the run far better. Sure, it technically requires less infrastructure, and I tend to eschew bot mauls due to them making things too easy, but building something this cursed was too good of an opportunity to pass up. So anyway, here we are. I can now craft a lot of things I didn't want to bother automating before. Now it's just a matter of setting an annoying amount of filters in the tank and filtering the cargo wagons for whatever they need. An interesting use case here is selector combinators, which require the decider combinators I'm making using the same wagon, so I'm just feeding the deciders back into the wagon when they're assembled, as well as into an output chest. I'm using fish as my dummy filter as always. Once you've configured the wagon and tank to have all the items you need, you just need to disable the filter on the inserter pulling from the tank and set stack size to 1. It is, for the record, incredibly slow to start up, but once things back up, it can replenish stock from spikes in usage quite quickly. Quality inserters also help with the transfer speed somewhat. I'm adding a second one of these to make military items, notably landmines, but I'm also using it to make radars, turrets, and exoskeletons, as well as flamethrowers. I'm hoping I'll be able to get away with using flamethrowers for the wall rather than setting up bullet and landmine infrastructure, because I really don't want to do that. I've started setting up a second space platform, which will be the one that will take me to Vulcanus, and probably Gleba as well. The core of the platform is going to be a sushi belt of asteroids, which I'm going to balance using circuits and a filter inserter. Obviously, the asteroid collectors are unfiltered, since it will maximize output and everything should get handled by the sushi logic anyway. I'm adding turrets as well, since they'll be needed for space travel, and connecting the collectors to the sushi belt. Here's the furnace design connected to the platform. I'm adding the crushers. The asteroid byproducts of crushing will simply go right back onto the sushi belt. I'm doing 2 for iron and 1 each for ice and carbon. Here's the module for thruster fuel. Adding the thrusters themselves, I've run into space issues, but it's nothing underground belts can't solve. I'm trying to avoid filling in the entire area between the thrusters and furnaces to reduce weight. I'm going to use splitters to filter the iron plates. Correction, I'm going to use splitters facing the other direction to filter the iron plates. Now I'm adding ammo assemblers and filling in some of the holes in the space platform. Here's more spaghetti as I try to route the bullets to the turrets. I'm connecting the thruster fuel and oxidizer to the thrusters, still attempting to reduce platform weight where possible. Now I'm just adding solar panels for power, and the platform should be good to go. I'm using efficiency modules to reduce power cost and save on solar panels. I'm begrudgingly filling this area in with space platform. Actually, no, this belt is getting rerouted for weight reduction. That'll work better. I'm setting the sushi belt to read the full belt, and connecting it to some combinators to set the inserter filters. It's a simple principle. If there's more than the desired amount of asteroids on the belt, set the inserter filter to that type of asteroid so it gets voided until the desired amount is reached. I really enjoy watching this base work. Now to build the wall. It turns out that in my hubris, I did not limit the pump jack chest, and I now have 960 pump jacks. Anyway, here's the oil that will fuel part of the flamethrower wall. While I think this design will work, I need to test it before I go implementing it all around the base. And what better way to test it than using myself as bait? Okay, that seems to work. Now to build like 30 more of these. I've built this little circuit thing that makes both types of train signals automatically. It's completely unnecessary, but I think it's kind of cool. Here's more walls. I'm lane balancing the iron belt on the platform to increase the buffer size for plates. Now that the platform is built, I'm going to have it do an unmanned test run, going to Vulcanus and back to Nauvis without stopping. If it survives, I will consider this a success. It survived, without damage in fact. Here's more train spaghetti. I've started removing trees in the path of the flamethrowers, since their pollution absorption is very helpful and I'd like to keep them doing that for as long as possible. I'm basically just going around the base on a train at this point, building walls as I go, and periodically going back to the mall for supplies, mostly underground pipes, which I can never seem to get enough of. Yet more walls. I'm holding strongly to the diagonal aesthetic where I can, even if it results in some oddly pokey walls. At this point, I only have 2 regions left to wall off, although if they both extend to the west, it might take a bit longer. I'm very happy to report that one region is in fact a biterless peninsula. That's one less wall to build. I finished my loop around the base, so here's another train intersection. I'm sending barreled lubricant and concrete up to the space platform since I'll need it for foundries. I never limited the space science platform, and I'm doing that now so it won't fill up its entire cargo hold. I've accidentally sent my quality solar panels to the wrong space platform. Here we go again, this time to the correct platform. I've realized why we weren't researching bullet damage. It was not, in fact, that there was not enough stone. I just accidentally reversed an underground belt. Now I'm off to new horizons. Farewell for now, Nauvis Base. Off to Vulcanus I go. I'm setting the wait condition to passenger present and passenger not present, so it will just wait at the planet until I tell it what to do. That wasn't supposed to happen. Guess I should have waited for the projectile damage research to finish before traveling. Anyway, no real harm done. I'm definitely happy with this platform design. And off we go. Welcome to Vulcanus, the land of worms, lava, and cliffs. And that is where I will leave you. I've not made a video like this before, and it was definitely an interesting experience. I will very likely do it again, as I'm committed to recording this run now, but I'm not sure how long that will take. If I do continue this, the next video will be about Vulcanus. In any case, goodbye for now.